you guys know the drill. Week 10 brought us more chaos in a sport that has no shortage of it. No point extending this out further, we've got a lot to go through, so let's get started. Well, let's go ahead and get this one over with. If you've been following up till this point, you know exactly what's coming from this one. Friday night, we got another fantastic episode of Genty Ball. Well, fantastic for everyone that wasn't San Diego State. The idea that came up with was to stack the box the entire time and hope that Boise State was too stupid to come up with anything else. Game plan? A complete failure. This isn't Auburn you're playing. Maddox the Madman, as they found out real quick, can throw the ball. You know who can't? The other team. San Diego State let Boise State put up 28 points on them before they finally got a first down. It was like watching a 10-year-old trying to throw hands with a horse equipped with a gun. Once realization began to hit that they weren't just going to be able to watch the run the entire time, of course that's when Genty put his big Boise blue balls all over their faces. Keep in mind that he is not playing at 100%. Nonetheless, the Broncos continue to live life on easy mode. They swiftly put the Aztecs to bed with another great win for the year. As Boise State is the highest ranked group of 5 team, the playoff bid is theirs to lose. For anyone still questioning whether or not they are a serious contender, please refer back to the Oregon game again. The fraud talk needs to be silenced now. But if you're so interested in seeing a fraud,
you got barbecue back there?
Have you ever heard of the definition of insanity? There are a few individuals in Happy Valley who could really use it. Penn State's main concern rolling into this game was whether or not they'd be with or without Drew Allar. While he did recover in time for this game, it literally makes absolutely no difference. When your offensive playbook is a picture of a vagina, there's no hope left. Par for the course with James Franklin. These two teams share similar levels of humility when facing off against top-tier teams, so the expectation of football diarrhea was delivered. The noon slate for them actually made sense. It was a terrible day to be a quarterback. Drew Allar was screen overlord and Will Howard was the check-down king. The $20 million roster tried just about everything imaginable to give Penn State the game. A mean pick six and weak play calling on their end kept the Fighting Sandusky's in the game. Howard was even kind enough to fumble the ball right before scoring to give the ball right back to them. And what'd they do with it? The exact same thing they did for the past 7 years in this rivalry. Cut themselves from any momentum. Drew Allar couldn't hit anyone down the field, and neither Nick Singleton or Tyler Warren could get any separation. Keegan-Michael Key's James Franklin cosplay showed more enthusiasm than anything I've seen from this offense. Alright, well it's first and goal, down by 7, let's see what genius play calling James Franklin has whipped up here.
The chance to tie this game up, Patron Allen. They hand it off, Allen, and he'll get a little closer back. They give it to him, Allen, and that Ohio defense stout in the middle again. Aller looking in the end zone. Ohio State.
You really begin to wonder to yourself, how come Penn State can never make the Big Ten championship? Now you understand. Record crowd and 5-star recruits in attendance, and you can't even get 5 yards to tie it. Dear Lord, the fraud meter has been smashed to bits. Penn State is the football equivalent of a cute Instagram girl with an OnlyFans. You'd think they were quality for date material until you see their bio. Penn State's bio? Ohio State, or any winning team for that matter. James Franklin is the Ryan Day of the Ryan Days. With many coaches having abysmal records against great teams, he has one of the worst. The fact you're chirping with kids instead of walking to the locker room after games makes it clear that you know these facts. Worst part for you is that going back to Vandy is no longer an option from the looks of it. Franklin coaches every game like he has 12 Saquon Barkleys in the backfield. You'll need a few before even thinking about beating your daddy. Speaking of the Buckeyes, they'll right the ship and get right back into the title conversation. But the Big Ten is still out of their control. They'll need a favor or two to happen before that topic comes up. Time to fire Ryan Day? I don't know, let them lose to Indiana or Michigan first. The pressure is on the cardiac arrest Canes as we've already had one of the remaining undefeateds fall. Despite several repeated attempts to live up to the ACC's directive and die, Cam Ward will not let them die. They have the top offense in the country, and today was certainly no exception. 400 yards and 5 touchdowns is just another Saturday experience for Cam Ward. The difference between him and Ashton Genty is Genty is making stats for fun. Ward is doing it out of necessity. Whatever he's getting paid, they just need to start handing him gold bars. They need to hand the Miami defense beanies and weenies because Malik Murphy had no trouble scoring either. Miami's defense was so horrible, you could actually hear a boo from Softcock Stadium. You know how hard it is to pull off that feat? You can hear a pin drop in that Scooby-Doo ghost town stadium. Things got so bad for the Canes that Miami found themselves trailing by multiple possessions in the third quarter. Manny Diaz isn't at Miami anymore, but he's still making Miami fans lose their shit. While the ACC office was getting ready to file a check to the officials though, Duke made way for the Canes to quickly come back into the game and take the lead. Jordan Moore's Odell-esque catch did little for them to prevail in this game, as the defense decided 3 quarters was enough football for the day. Xavier Restrepo was a one-man wrecking crew, and the Duke offense had little interest in wrecking anything other than parity in the ACC. Canes moved to 9-0, and Mario Cristobal seems to have structured a squad capable enough to bring Miami to their first title in Tank Conference. They have less losses than every single team in the SEC, so take that for what it's worth. More than likely, it'll stay like that for the rest of the schedule. It's easy street until the postseason. Until then, I'm taking the Canes. It was long overdue, but they've finally done it. The SEC has finally begun to crack down on the fake injury epidemic affecting the conference. As you would expect, there's nobody else more crashed out about it than Elaine Kiffin. Thus what preceded was a rage-fueled genocide of anything close to pigs. Turn that jukebox off because it's no longer pig time. Took them all season, but Ole Miss has finally shown their talent. For Arkansas, they stopped Ole Miss once and never again. Jackson Dart made Cam Ward's performance this week look elementary, as he had over 500 yards and 6 touchdowns. Sam Pittman tried the quarterback hokey pokey to no avail. Neither Singleton nor Green were going to do enough to fix this. In any other game, their performance could potentially win them this game, but 700 yards given up all but guaranteed it was all for naught. A defense as useful as tits on a boar. Remove the 2 losses Ole Miss has, and Dart is a Heisman finalist. Jordan Watkins took the spot off Trey Harris and has become a one-man show which cooked the bacon and brought it home. For some teams, this is humorous. Other fan bases such as Tennessee are wondering to themselves how they lost to this team. The answer? Only Arkansas can beat Arkansas. They just tend to do it a lot. Sam Pittman is back into the melting pot of hot seats just as quick as he got out of it. You've got a bye week to rest up before the hated Longhorns come to town. It'd be wise to avoid self-mutilation this time. Ole Miss still hangs in the grasp of playoff contention, but the only way they'll keep said status is by holding off the blood-sucking parasites of college football known as the Georgia Bulldogs. We'll see how they perform with their backs against the wall. Elaine Kiffin might fake a back injury. In incredibly rare circumstances occurred. Illinois has filled their stadium. If they played like they were thankful for it, they might actually be a respectable team. But this is par for the course with the low-tier Big Ten. If this team were consistent, they would be a threat to most teams in the country. But of course, they never are. One week they're letting the Soilermakers score half 100 on them, and then the next they can't score a point against the Fool's Gold Gophers. Josh McCray had one significant run play through the entire game before Illinois decided that was enough running for the day. Luke Altmaier was a mixed bag per the norm. It would probably be a little more if his line wasn't made of McDonald's ice cream machines. Every game is chaotic under Burt Bielema. Minnesota was just about as efficient with their offense, but they actually used the run game. Darius Taylor had 130 yards on the ground and 50 more in the air. Illinois had a 1-point lead late before ref ball got involved and set a man out for targeting. This would be followed up by the Gophers taking the lead. All this time, people were crying about Missouri being ranked, and here's Illinois at home getting ready to submit their application to the Pinstripe Bowl. Dear Yankee Stadium, please observe the following.
10-win season. Backside pressure. Ball is loose. Minnesota's on top of it. Game, set, match.
This loss was worse for Penn State than it was for Illinois, as that was their only quality win down the drain. Not that the Fighting Illnesses had much of a chance anyway, but their playoff hopes have been fumbled away. It would be wise to try running the ball next time. Better yet, try and be consistent for once. Minnesota could use the same advice, but their inconsistency under PJ Fleck has still landed them into a bowl. Now you know as well as anyone how this goes. You're only allowed to win one game this season, as anything above 7-5 for Fleck is a crime that is punishable by watching this game right here.
No, 2 fouls.
We've all dreaded the day this game would come. It's like a game of the century, but if by game you mean turd. It's like if Zach Edey was a football game. A complete foul machine. Ryan Walters went ahead and gave anyone unfortunate enough to watch them the middle finger, as they threw Ryan Brown back on the bench for Hudson Card. And yep, while he wasn't bad, he certainly wasn't great. 47 yards and 2.0 yards per carry? Damn, they doing numbers out here. If you had an iota of support this season by having Ryan Brown being a light on this team, then you go back to your roots of absolutely horrendous play calling and football tomfoolery. Lord almighty, what a train wreck. Despite having a much better run game, Northwestern had no intent of winning either. In a game plan only consisting of Purdue running the ball up the middle, it somehow resulted in Purdue being able to come from behind late to unleash true hell on college football fans. College Tank Bowl overtime. Luckily, Ryan Walters, in complete coaching malpractice, decided to go for it on 4th and 6, and like everything else this season, Purdue failed. Northwestern tried to give you the game, but your negative IQ move all but confirmed your spot in the gun.
Nice snap, and this will walk it off!
As the name of your running back, which you barely use, would suggest, the Lords of Football are mocking you, Purdue. Winless in the conference and once again coming up short in overtime due to coaching failure. Enjoy this win, Northwestern, man. It could potentially be your last of 2024. Considering how you've tanked, it might be time to consider options in the coaching carousel. I mean, what are you gonna do? Go to a bowl? Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but the train has run out of tracks. You're running on pain and agony. Get out! Welcome to Grayson McCall's retirement party, and you best guarantee that the team would show up for it. It really is nice that the state of California is providing hospitality to the ACC by boosting everyone else in the conference. They can't beat anyone in it. I'm not sure if it was the uniforms or finally being pushed into a wall, but the Wolfpack looked like the expectations that were set on them in the offseason. CJ Bailey was unstoppable, only having 2 incomplete passes all game. Jordan Waters and Hollywood smothered the entirety of the Stanford defense with almost 300 yards rushing. Quarterback Ashton Daniels had more rushing yards than he did passing. There's the end of the story for the Trees. Aleke Omanor contributed more to the Stanford passing game than anyone else on the team. But with the Wolfpack firing on all cylinders, it was no contest. They painted the stadium in red, both of themselves and that of the blood of Stanford. Wherever the defense went, they certainly were not around to do any of that in this game. Troy Taylor may want to go ahead and head back to the FCS. There are just coaches not cut out for the grind of the Power 4, even if it is the ACC. NC State is now only 1 win away from going bowling, but the challenges ahead will put their consistency to the test. Remember that one time Stanford had a 100% win percentage in conference play? Their fans can reminisce on the glory days of their time in the ACC as they watch from the couch in December. I swear, it really does feel like an insult to be thrown on the CW network. In all of the rage this channel has caused ACC fans, you have to agree with that statement. Anyway, Virginia Tech and Syracuse would battle it out to where the winner would reach the heights of bowl eligibility. The Hokies would be at a major disadvantage, as both Bichelle Tutton and Kyron Drones would be out for this game due to injuries. Colin Schlee would have to take the spot that Drones left. Considering this was his first performance in a game like this, he did not do bad at all. Virginia Tech started off strong early as the Hokies continued the momentum from weeks previous. Kyle McCord was better than last week, but that's only because he didn't throw a million interceptions this time. Both teams collected a bunch of yards, but couldn't do much with them to score many points. Every time you turned your head away, somebody fumbled the ball away. Though Syracuse was down early, they came back into the game following a few missed tackles, but because they refused to stop the run, the Hokies instantly gained the lead back. McCord in primetime though would drive the entire field again to put the game into overtime. LaQuint Allen would pulverize the defensive line to score first, which would leave Virginia Tech to respond by doing the same thing. Or the Chokies would sell the game through fumble number 5. Brent Pry made the mistake of losing when playing not to lose. 1-13 in one-score games is proof that choke artists might just be an insult to the word choke. With the schedule ahead not being too favorable, they might get more opportunities to sell. No shortage of suffering in this sport, the Citrus pulls out a dub at the time they desperately needed it. 2 road games coming up could determine the look of the season for them. Long as Kyle McCord doesn't die again, the ceiling could well be above bowl eligibility. Alright! Quite the accomplishment for Fran Brown and co. Just remember, it's not how you start, it's how the ACC ref ball will let you finish. Despite losing 3 games this season, Vanderbilt is still one of the Cinderella stories of the 2024 season. Auburn is like the story of Chris Chan, painfully watchable. Like most games this season for the Barn, it would be the defense holding their opponent out and the offense doing absolutely nothing but laying eggs. Diego Manziel had one of his worst games completion-wise, but came up clutch when Vandy needed him to. Auburn managed to get one scoring drive in the first half and then called it a day. The Vandy defensive line had a mile of real estate in Peyton Thorne's vicinity, ensuring that the Tigers would be doing a whole lot of nothing throughout the game. Diego Pavia is once again leading a win over Hugh Freeze. Does that sound familiar? Because if this holds, it would be the third time. The Commodores would chew clock once they got a comfortable lead. What was Auburn gonna do? Stall out again? No, I'll do you one better.
Playoff picture. Thorne goes to Fairweather, the ball comes out, and that'll do it. If it's a fumble, it is.
Vanderbilt has tied the series with Auburn and cemented themselves as a top 25 team again. What a day in history. Vandy is now not only Alabama state champions and the owners of Hugh Freeze, but above anything else, they are going to a bowl. Alright! This time they'll actually be participating and not just watching. You've earned it. Go shotgun those sprites. All hail the Vandy pimp. If Hugh Freeze has any sense whatsoever, now is the time to go ahead and start Walker White. You have nothing else to go off of. Your record is somehow worse than Brian Harson's. They gave him less than 2 years to turn it around, so unless some signs show now that the Barn is trending upwards, they might be paying 2 buyouts at once. This result might be proof that Hugh Freeze was never a good coach. He just paid illegally to pretend like he was. War Dead Eagle. It must be getting lonely at the top. With the SEC cannibalizing themselves and Indiana getting f***ed by ranking bias, the Ducks sit alone at the top of the food chain. Although, if Michigan had a competent coaching staff, a new quarterback, a new offensive line, a new defense, and a new team in general, they might be able to win this game. But we live in the current year, and right now, they suck. Connor Stallions never felt so far away for the Wolverines. In terms of quarterback battles, it was Dylan Gabriel versus 3 eggs. While Michigan's defense did the best they could, their efforts would be in vain as their offense couldn't get any sort of gain. It reeks of DJ Ukulele. Michigan's run game once again got shut down and Colston Loveland could only do so much to put Michigan in scoring position. But said scoring attempts went something like this.
Orji, end around, Samaj Morgan wants a throwback pass.
Look at this, he throws it up. Look at that elite ball placement. That's elite ball placement.
Truly the pinnacle of Michigan football. Tom Brady can't be any prouder. Fans are already calling for the canning of Sharon Moore, thinking that if they fire him, Stallions can become the head coach and all of their problems get fixed instantly. Bad news, this is your reality now. Go watch hockey if you want to watch a championship contender. Northwestern's incompetence is the only shot you have of making a bowl game unless Ryan Day decides it'd be funny to lose to you again. I'd start a quarterback petition immediately. The Ducks have gone from destroying the Pac-12 to doing the exact same thing to the Big Ten. With the defense looking stronger every week, many wonder if this is going to be the year where the Ducks finally get a national title in Eugene. Their kryptonite awaits at the end of the season, so we'll find out if they can relinquish their demons and clinch the 1 seed. This one on the road didn't come without consequence though. It's taxation time for the injury bug. The victim this time? Tez Johnson. A potential season-ending injury just made the Ducks' quest to glory a bit tougher. Now's a better time than ever for Evan Stewart to finally show up. The true gauntlet has finally begun for the Gators, starting with their hated rivals and the defiers of traffic laws, the Georgia Bulldogs. Taking place in absolutely nobody's favorite stadium in Jacksonville, Florida is suffering major bites from the injury bug, but had hopes under DJ Lagway that they would be running fine. Georgia's unwritten law states that they only play good football in the second half. Carson Beck was feeling like Thanksgiving should be celebrated early and kept gifting Florida with interceptions. Georgia fans were left cleaning their TVs to make sure that Jake Fromm wasn't on the screen. Wait a second here. This is not how this is supposed to go. DJ Lagway throwing clean balls, Florida dominating in the trenches. As the game progressed, Georgia looked like they were going from potential upset alert to just straight up being the worst team in this game. Realizing the danger Georgia was in, the football gods and the injury bug made an alliance with one goal: to go on a genocide route to spite the Florida Gators. QB2 for Florida is down, with a no-contact injury, meaning that not only will they be down to their third string for this game, but possibly for the rest of the season. Aiden Warner would have to take the throne the rest of the way for Florida. Being thrown into a situation like this against one of the top defensive lines in the country resulted in exactly what you would expect: a complete collapse. The high-end talent would win the day for the Bulldogs. The parasitic entities known as Georgia fans would get another week to celebrate a win, but skepticism is starting to stack about whether or not Carson Beck can lead this team to a championship. The play calling from Mike Bobo is doing them no favors at all. Florida fans can speak about hypotheticals and what-ifs, but as you and everyone else knows, you live in the current year. Depending on who you are, this could be good or bad news, but the quarterback injuries could potentially buy Billy Napier another year. The best thing you can do is hope that down the stretch you can get the upset on one of the 3 next teams you face. You could have 5 more quarterback injuries and probably still beat Florida State. Homecoming from Iowa State. The only thing that came home for them though was a dose of reality, as up until now, they've been living in dreamland as one of the only remaining undefeateds in the country. Texas Tech is one good coaching job away from being a great team, and with Bear and Morton starting again, we'll see if Joey McGuire can pull it off. The Morton and Josh Kelly combo looked unstoppable through most of the game, as Iowa State had little they could do to stop it. Taj Brooks was doing more work in the run game as well. All of the marbles are finally stacking in the Red Raiders' favor. However, Rocco Purdy was carrying his own weight, as he had 300 yards passing in the game. Late in the game, Morton began to struggle quite a lot, but Iowa State was suffering from their own struggles. Specifically, a Kyle Conradi field goal just a little bit to the right. Just a little. But in typical Typhoon fashion, this did not deter Iowa State, as they got the ball back and scored off of Carson Brown. It would be up to their gassed-out defense to stop them one more time in order to win the day. Unfortunately for them, the Big 12 is the realm of infinite bullshit. Consistency is dead, and it's your turn to learn that motto.
Here's next to him, yep. Direct snap, Brooks to the end zone, touchdown! Texas Tech has the lead over unbeaten Iowa State.
Just like that, the Typhoon has reached landfall and has now turned into a tropical storm. This brightens a few spirits, specifically BYU, who now owns a lease on the entire conference at this point. Who their adversary will be in the Big 12 championship is yet to be determined. Of all teams, Colorado has a great shot to sneak in, as they play the Red Raiders on Big Noon Saturday next week. Prime is one Texas Tech win away from cucking the tropical storms out of the Big 12 championship. Texas Tech would have a week to prepare for that game, along with the typical bowl game celebrations. Yay! Better hope that Zach Kitley ass tattoo is enough of a motivator for the Red Raiders. Though the tropical storms would step on a rake this week, the same result could not be said for the Hoosiers. With Curtis Rourke healthy again, it would be back to business for them. The Spartans started out the game red hot, getting a 10-0 lead on the undefeated Hoosiers. Once Indiana scored the first touchdown, for whatever reason, they literally said, "Man, this game's over," and died. Indiana faked out the college football world before completely going ham on the Spartans. 8.5 Fingers did whatever he wanted to on the Michigan State secondary, and Aiden Childs was giving them every opportunity to do so. The Spartan run game was truly a legendary showing with a total of negative 46 yards? What were they doing? Running backwards the entire game? This score makes a little more sense considering the fact that Indiana had 7 sacks and 15 TFLs, but what in the hell happened to the offensive line? Send out an Amber Alert immediately. Kirk Ignetti continues to make history for the Hoosiers, taking them to their one and only 9-0 season in program history. Athletic directors won't give a rat's ass to how old he is, they just want him and they're gonna want him now. Indiana isn't just a playoff contender, they are a national contender. Ohio State will be the real test to figure this out, but first they'll get to pad their defensive interception stats against Michigan. The Spartans continue to nosedive as Jonathan Smith is already getting Mel Tucker comparisons. Who the hell is a 1-minute weather delay? Anyway, here come the Houston fans, as the focus goes to Casper. Houston desperately needs another win to have the fans believing that Willie Fritz can carry this team somewhere in the future. With the Wildcats already having a loss in the Big 12, they need to win out to be a lock for the Big 12 title. Unfortunately for them, Houston shares the same feelings as the Red Raiders. They want chaos. Kansas State's offense suffered from the same tragic story that Michigan State's did. A young quarterback starting on the road was just too much for him to handle. Avery Johnson was far too trigger-happy to be consistent, which gave Houston more opportunities than intended. Follow this up with a predictable and melted vanilla offense and you'll all but guarantee you're in trouble. Houston remembers last year when you beat them 43-0, and they want you to suffer for it. Zayon Chris would rally the Cougars to the game, both through the run and the pass, ensuring that Houston would have a lead with 3 minutes left to go. Avery Johnson would have to lead Kansas State down the field in order to get back the lead. Could he do it though?
The tight end. Johnson throws right down the middle. Intercepted by Becky. What a play!
Will Howard sends his condolences. At least Johnson didn't slide to end the game. Houston grabs another come-from-behind upset win in the Big 12. Though the season is long, they've managed to remedy theirs by getting these upsets. Colorado couldn't be happier. You've opened the gates for them to somehow make the Big 12 championship. Just like the BYU game, Chris Kleeman is going to have to start answering some questions as to why his team comes into these games completely unprepared. Building for the future for 6 years and counting is what their likely response will be. Someone get the beefy 5-layer burrito. It's happening. Oh, good lord, it's happening. The football gods are actually making an example of you. Nebraska hasn't made a bowl game since 2016, and after finishing Game 6 at 5-1, everyone was convinced they'd finally break the chain this year.
Not so fast, midget!
Dylan Raiola had his breakout game. By break, I mean break everyone's expectations of him being Patrick Mahomes. He's closer to Jackson Mahomes than he is Patrick. All these dances in for what? To go 50% against one of the bottom feeders of the Big Ten at home? The run game was suboptimal once again, and the defense was getting toasted on various drives. UCLA is an improving team under first-year coach Deshaun Foster, but they have no business doing this to you on the road. Did Ohio State beat y'all twice? Every fan in that stadium is becoming self-aware of what's likely to come. A meltdown never before seen, except in the last 7 years of Nebraska football. Triple N will now be referred to as No Nebraska November. They are banned from winning games this month apparently. The absolute biggest punch in the gut here is that for the Husker faithful, this was yet another one-score game that they lost. You're knee-deep in football hell. The next 3 teams in your schedule might be what bury you all the way down. It's like for every bad thing every other program does, the football gods lay out their outrage on teams like Nebraska. The Bruins have gone from 5 straight losses to 2 straight wins in a row. Some teams with bad records give up and call it a season, but you didn't and you deserve credit for that. Now for the opposite chain of events. Go, go, Gadget, lose another football game! North Carolina had their fair share of bumps in the road this season, but the program in a red solo cup is literally in the football shadow realm. It should be like clockwork at this point, but Florida State laid yet another egg. It's quite ironic how they consistently produce one of the best special teams performances all season long, but whenever the offense steps on the field, it's an absolute disaster. Now I'm beginning to understand why DJ Ukulele was there to begin with. Everyone behind him somehow puts his performances to shame. Brock Glenn and Luke Kromahoke were both fucking horrendous to watch in this game. Maybe if you had someone who could develop a quarterback at the helm of the program, they might know how to throw a football. The O-line allowed 7 sacks, and there was only 1 receiver on the team with more than a single catch all game. Is this team even serious? This is the thanks you are getting from Mike Norvell for the extension. He's reaching 80s SMU levels of con artist. He's one cheating scandal away from being right up there. Jacoby Criswell and Omarion Hampton buried the FSU defense too, as you would expect, had no response against. You tanked so hard you've got Mac Brown doing dances in the locker room. Every week that goes on, Cal fans keep slamming their heads against the wall asking why. Why did they have to lose to this team? We're all wondering the same exact thing. There's a good chance you've seen the last of Florida State winning in 2024. They'll probably be suing the ACC for that. North Carolina somehow 1 win away from bowl eligibility, proving that one bad Group of 5 loss doesn't break an entire season. Need more proof? Go ask Notre Dame. The Knights have been on a full-on collision course the past 5 weeks. However, UCF has had a plan in place for this game against Arizona. The space uniforms. Apparently, they were not just for show. As predicted last week, Dylan Risk was the guy that the Knights have been looking for. Gus Malzahn actually developing a quarterback? I thought that was illegal. Whatever the deal was, he put a fire under the offense that we've never seen before. Arizona would take the reins of UCF's losing streak. In a surprising twist of events, Tertora McMillan was not the leading receiver for Arizona. With a composite rush game of 5 total yards, that should tell you the entire story. The Wildcats were ass-blasted to infinity and beyond. Didn't this team enter the preseason as a top 20 team? Seems they misplaced their hype. But they beat Oklahoma! Have you seen Oklahoma? Arizona will have to win out in order to secure a bowl bid, and between the Hypnotoads, the Skibbities, and the upset Heavies, their odds don't look too good. It may be a late point in the season, but Dylan Risk has brought some major motivation to this team. He from this point onward will be known as the Riskler. It's homecoming for the Cowboys. Oklahoma State would be debuting some new uniforms in this game, showing off some throwbacks from 1909. They took their combo to the next level by playing football like it was the same year. Alan Bowman was, per the usual, a mixed bag. Sometimes it was a bag of candy, and sometimes it was a bag of Florida State football. Unfortunately, he'd have to carry the entire team on his back because the run game was non-existent. You can usually get a read on whether or not Oklahoma State won or lost by checking out Ollie Gordon's rushing stats. He had 25 total yards. So yeah, it wasn't pretty. You know who did have a great day running the ball though? Our favorite Cam Skibbity. 150 yards rushing, which was nothing compared to Sam Leavitt, who had double that through the air. The Cowboys fans were just praying at this point that the pain would stop. Sorry to inform you, but the delay is not permanent. Mike Gundy has entered a spot now in which he is at a severe risk of losing his position as a coach. A veteran coach in this league will be remembered as such, but being paid $7 million to go 0-6 in the conference is not money well spent. Oklahoma State fans paid to watch you play when they could pay for Tinder Platinum for the same price. It may be temporary pleasure all the same, but at least there's a purpose to it. Kenny Dillingham appeared to be on a revenge tour this season, and many are suffering the price. Another team this season will do so, as the Sun Devils had earned a 13th game. The Sun Devils appear to have all the momentum in their favor right now, but they will be hosting the Knights next week, who also have everything going in their favor. Chaos is the only guarantee. Texas A&M is the one and only team left in the SEC who hasn't laid an egg against a conference opponent. After beating LSU at home last week, they would be tested on the road in Cockvember against South Carolina at night. The performance from last week earned Marcel Reed the starting spot for this game against the Cocks. Sure to hope that the ribbon you wore for first place in the SEC was pleasant. It's time for reality to come crashing down. You've walked straight into a sandstorm. Being at home, Lenore's Sellers had a phenomenal day shredding through A&M's defense, 350 total yards to be exact. Combine that with another 150 from Rocket Sanders, and it was an absolute destruction. A&M had the offensive personnel to keep up with the Cocks, but Reed couldn't put it together. Every time they got any semblance of momentum, they'd follow it up by stepping on a rake and turning the ball over. Not sure where Mike Elko's balls went, but he refused to put in Connor Wegman at any point in the game. It might have not ended up with a win, but at least attempt to put a fight out there. As if the Cocks piling on you wasn't bad enough, try getting bites from a particular bug. Le'Veon Moss is out for the year. Losing in South Carolina is never enough. Infinite pain is all but guaranteed in Williams-Brice. But you're an A&M fan, you know that losses like these are par for the course. Mike Elko is fitting in well. If you aren't midnight yelling at your TV, can you even call yourself an A&M fan? Nonetheless, this result all but guarantees one thing above all else. The SEC is f***ed. Nobody knows who's making it in or who isn't. All we know is that it will be primetime action to bear witness to the end result. At least everyone's suffering.
What the hell, boy?
It's really important for us to know where Tyler from Spartanburg is right now. He needs to refuel that Dabo machine, because it's broken again. I suppose it's fitting they tied you with Iowa State this week. You both managed to soil yourselves. The only difference was that you got whooped by the TV Birds. Not all those who wander are lost, but Clemson's defense sure as hell was. Tyler Shuck and Isaac Brown were going through it like wet paper sitting out in the rain for months. Clemson fans are left wondering why they didn't go to the Molly McGrath lookalike competition rather than spending their time watching Clemson hand Louisville free yards. To think they call this Death Valley, the death of Wes Godwin's time at Clemson at bare minimum. Are we sure Lincoln Riley didn't take over duties while on their bye week? While the Taters tried to rally late in the fourth quarter, the lack of urgency ensured that the end result was always determined from the start. When you try the Texas route of trashing the field, this is the earned consequences of your actions. Most Clemson fans, if given the opportunity, would meet at the paw and take a massive dump. That's what this performance earns. That and Clown of the Week. At this rate, South Carolina is likely to beat you. $11 million well spent in my mind. How much NIL money for Trevor Lawrence to come back? Good question. No matter what though, Clemsoning is back. Louisville seems to have mended the ship and proved that they are a threat in the Tank Conference. A threat worthy of a bowl bid. Alright! You've got the Pee Wee California school to face before facing up against Pitt in Kentucky. Do you like your odds there? Well, there isn't a thing called Louisvilling, so it's possible. Okay, what's going on here? For the third week of the last 4, Iowa has scored 40 points. It's safe to say that any joke laughing at Iowa's offense can be shut down. Locktober has been swiftly put to an end, and by extension, Wisconsin. Multiple interceptions in clutch time situations and more stalling out on offense. It's like they reverted back to their week 3 selves. Iowa continues to rock with Brendan Sullivan, and mixed with Caleb Johnson, the run game is an absolute bulldozer. More than 300 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns is a stat Iowa fans would have nutted for last season. Kirk Ferentz has put together a lethal offense, making the Hawk Tuas a legit force in the Big Ten. Wisconsin, to say the least, jumped around and found out. The only air raiding they did was the raid in their pants. Kinnick Stadium actually playing jump around at the end of the game was the nail in the coffin. Iowa has at the bare minimum proved that they are bowl game material again. Alright! Once we get there though, try and score a point. Although, I feel that isn't asking much. I don't handle losing very well. It hasn't happened much in my career. That part of it is unacceptable. Thus the quote of a man with a defense made of paper mache. Perhaps you should try investing in that, then maybe you would lose a little less. That would be one piece of the puzzle. The next would be finding a clutch quarterback. Miller Moss is no Caleb Williams, but for whatever reason, Lincoln Riley coaches like he's got 3 Caleb Williams in his quarterback room. Where are they at? While Moss was a problem, he wasn't the main issue. As many elementary schoolers could do, Will Rogers shredded through the USC defense, as did Jonah Coleman. While the Condoms were successful in the run game, Riley was just way too heavy on the pass. Though USC would come back late in the game, the Huskies would rally one more time to take the lead again. The coaching incompetence would rear its ugly head on the final drive for USC. 1st and 10, 7-yard pass. 2nd down, pass incomplete. 3rd down, pass incomplete. Boy, I sure do wonder what he's got for Washington on 4th and 4. Show us your creativity here.
Pressure coming. Moss got rid of it. Incomplete. Ball game over.
Lincoln Riley, the Kyle Shanahan of college football. Once crunch time rolls around, the team falls off a cliff. It's not like we're getting our ass kicked. Okay, yeah, Nebraska, what's your record? I'm really curious. Brandon Staley said something similar before the Chargers canned his ass. Unless you want to end up with the same fate, some serious coaching adjustments must be made. Otherwise, you'll be sitting on the couch with both USC and Oklahoma fans who will be laughing at you. We'll see you in 2 weeks for the Nebraska game in the one-play short bowl. It's extremely fitting that Tennessee is playing all of these night games. That way they don't show up until the second half of the video. Kentucky is coming off the bad news barn at home, and only bringing half of their team to play. The rest are injured. Tennessee has been suffering from bad quarterback play bailed out by having the best defense in the country. In an ironic twist of fate, Nico, I'm going to choose now to be good for you, had a really good day, making good throws and great decisions. But guess what? Now the receivers can't do what they were on scholarship for and catch the ball. The offensive line has more holding and false start calls than actual good blocks, and even the kicker refused to do his job. Tennessee brings more uniforms to their stadium than consistent football. As a Vol fan, it's an unbearable experience to watch. Kentucky looked better on offense than they have all year somehow, with Brock Vandagriff actually completing passes and making really good throws. Wait a second, we can't have that! So says the injury bug. Gavin Wimsatt would have to take the role for the rest of the game. A mixed bag to say the least. While the efforts were great by Kentucky, it was in vain. Tennessee spammed Dylan Sampson to infinity, running down the clock and not giving Kentucky the chance to come back in the game. Considering that Tennessee beats Kentucky at everything, including Rocket League, this outcome is the more predictable one. The Vols once again keep the prize of the beer barrel ahead of the homecoming game against the Cowbell College. After that, Georgia. Both teams would just be better off putting their defenses out for offense. The Wildcats now have to beat Texas on the road in order to make a bowl. In other entirely unrelated news, basketball season is finally here. A pivotal match for the rights of owning the ACC this season. Eli Holstein would be returning for this game to the relief of the Pitt faithful. It would be a match for the ages, is what I would say if SMU didn't ruin it by performing anal destruction on the Panthers. Pitt clearly forgot what the taste of defeat was like, so the Horsies had to remind them in brutal fashion. Kevin Jennings lit the Pitt secondary on fire with 300 yards in the air. They were doing whatever they wanted to Schittsburg. Instead of letting the fourth quarter be the usual Pitt comeback time, SMU decided it was another opportunity for them to lay the opposition to bed. Things got so bad, Holstein, as quickly as it came back for Pitt, was put on the bench for Nate Yarnell, who, while he performed a lot better, was against Pitt's intramurals out there for funsies. So just like that, both the top squads in Pennsylvania ate a massive L for their Saturday meal. The Horsies have cemented themselves as the primary threat to Miami for reign of tank conference, with those two very likely being the only two competing for said spot. Them and the Canes are the only two undefeated left in the conference. So pending irritable bowel syndrome on both sides, the two meeting in Charlotte seems to be the likely outcome. Pitt still has the season and possible playoff hopes ahead for them, but Clemson is down the stretch in what will likely be Dabo trying to prove Clemsoning isn't real. So good luck with that. The old-fashioned Southwest rivalry lived up to the expectations it had on it. A true shootout by name and somewhat by score. One team was shredding through the air, and one was doing it through the ground. Josh Hoover was lighting Baylor's secondary up with almost 350 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. They even had Savion Williams pass for a score. Sawyer Robinson did work passing the ball as well, but him and Bryson Washington made way through the line of scrimmage for score after score. Seeing the trajectory of both of these teams in their offensive game plan, it was exactly as planned. The only question to be asked was who was going to take the reins of the game at the end. TCU would tie the game with 2 minutes left in the ball game, so the pressure was on the Bears to clutch the game in the end. Sawyer would lead them down the field with minimal effort like security in an SEC stadium. The end result would be up to Isaiah Hankins to decide.
Kick on the way for Hankins, and it is good!
TCU fans are probably thinking to themselves, why do we look so different every week? It's called the Big 12. Consistency is dead. With the Hypnotoads croaking, both teams are now 1 win away from a bowl game. Although the road is easier for the Bears and the Frogs. Shows you how important this game was for both teams. Wait, they rushed the field for this? That'll do it for Week 10. Before we put a wrap on this episode, it's time to quickly overview exactly where the teams stand in their paths to the championship. The Big Ten is led by the Ducks and the Hoosiers. Indiana's match against Ohio State will likely determine which of the two goes to Indianapolis. Oregon is likely a shoo-in, which leaves Penn State for playoff hopes and not much more. Everyone else is likely out. SEC play is still anyone's guess. With A&M losing, everyone in the conference now has a conference loss. Alabama and LSU will play this week, as well as Georgia and Ole Miss. Those results will open up more questions in the next week. As it stands, there are still 6 or 7 teams still fighting for a spot in the playoffs. The Big 12 is BYU's to lose at this point. While they have their spot locked, their opponent is much more convoluted. Iowa State and Colorado only have 1 loss, and the Buffs will take on Texas Tech next week. If both teams win out, the Buffs could seal the spot on that alone. Kansas State going down puts them in the wild card for said spot, but the road there is very unlikely. BYU, Iowa State, and Colorado are the only 3 teams with any real shot at the playoff. Tank conference seems to be all but confirmed. SMU and Miami are the 2 dominant teams in the conference, both undefeated in said conference, and they don't play each other. Pending some chaos in the coming weeks, this conference is all but sealed. The playoff picture could have Pittsburgh or Clemson sneaking in, but leaves room for nobody else. Until they lose, the group of 5 is entirely in the hands of Genty Ball and Boise State. Unless they blow it in the coming weeks, this needs no more explanation. So that'll do it for this week. Here's my week-by-week top 25 per the norm. Nobody got kicked out this week, but I did make some major switches in terms of where they were placed. Shout out to all my Patreon supporters who got to see this video on Tuesday rather than the Wednesday afternoon it usually is posted. Your support is greatly appreciated. As always, I'll see you guys next week for more November chaos. Power to Tardaria! Someone do me a favor and let Mike Elko know that I might have found some defensive guys to put on scholarship.